I've done a few videos already on how to build a rig like this. This is the newest, latest, and greatest version. I want to show you how to build this and why you might want to build it. And I'm actually doing it kind of an interesting way where we're filming this on a mirror version of this rig. So by just watching this video, you'll be able to see kind of the benefits of building something like this. This is a Micro Four Thirds version. There's a few reasons why you might want to do that, and we'll get into it. And the version you're watching is shot on the Lumix full frame cameras. But for the most part, you could do this with any camera you want. So I'm gonna show you kind of a overview of what this is. We'll take it apart and build it back together. You can see there's two cameras stacked on top of each other. That is the most obvious thing first and foremost. Main benefit is you get a wide angle and a close-up. Now you could invert those. If you wanted the close-up to be the top camera and the wide angle to be the bottom, that would work just fine. In this setup, there's some extra wires. I do have a battery here on the side. So this is the SmallRig NPF batteries that have the additional USB-C output on them attached to an NPF battery mount that also has a power output powering the camera. So this stays charged for a very long time, no batteries to swap. And then on this side, I do have a handle, and this is kind of nice. Both of these cameras allow for remote triggering. So I have one button, start, stop, to trigger both cameras. Very convenient if you're recording on two cameras. That way you're not recording on one, recording on the other, starting and stopping twice. It's all one pull. So let's take it apart and you can really understand how this works. I have this XLR2 module. That is completely unnecessary. You don't need it, but it is nice to have if you're shooting with something like the GH7 and you want 32-bit float audio. This is the XLR2 module, lets you do that, but totally not required for this setup. You could do this with Sony, you could do this with Canon or Nikon, any camera system you want, although there are some unique benefits to doing it with the Lumix cameras. On top, here I did mention we've got that remote trigger, so I can just unplug that here from the side. I do have some accessories helping me do some of the cable management. So you can see the trigger is just right here on the side, simple enough to undo. Both of these cameras are in a cage. These are the SmallRig cages, and I like it just because it gives you some optional mounting points, for example, like this handle. And like I said, on this side, we've got that battery, so we'll just unplug that USB-C that's delivering power. And you can see, just with a few twists and turns, this camera on the top slides right off. If I get the cables out of the way, you'll see that can just pop right off. Now, the genius or the brilliance of using these cages is that the bottom of the cage is an Arca-Swiss plate. So kind of not front to back on the camera, but side to side. This is Arca-Swiss. And if you get an Arca-Swiss mount, you can slide the camera right in very simply, and you can line it up exactly where you want your lenses in line. If you wanted to offset them for some reason, you could do that. But in general, you'd want them probably more or less lined up square with each other, and it attaches in a simple twist. The reason I like doing it this way is because it's as low as profile as I've figured out how to do. Ideally with a setup like this, you want very little distance between both lenses. The closer those lenses are, the better to maintain your eye line. I've talked about it a lot before in videos where whenever you cut to the side of someone, if they're talking this way and there's a side angle, it's very distracting, kind of a bad look, if you ask me. So if we wanted to, so for example, like right now, I have a 9mm on this top camera, which in full frame equivalent would be like an 18mm, but this is 9mm on Micro Four Thirds. If I take this off, I could invert the lenses and I would put like my 20mm, which in full frame equivalent would be like 40mm, pop that up top, and the wide goes on the bottom. Now, we're gonna do that on this camera so you can see the effect. Now that you've kind of seen wide on the top, close up on the bottom, we're gonna switch it so you can see what the inverse is. So now you can see the effect of switching those focal lengths. If we're doing the close up on the top camera and the wide angle on the bottom camera, you really can't tell which lens I'm looking at because those lenses are so close together, maintaining that eye line no matter what. This is great if you're doing any type of talking head content where you want the primary focus to be on the face, but like we were doing it at the beginning, if you're doing more of a hands-on demonstration and you want more action down here, down low, you could do the close-up on the bottom camera. It's really up to you and whatever your content demands. Let's get back to this rig and how it works because I'm not done taking it apart. Now, this is where it might be beneficial to go back to the way we had it because I think the close-up on the bottom camera is gonna be a lot better. This battery on the side, once it's empty, it's easy to swap. You can just pop it right off, unplug it, and here's the beauty. The rig stays powered on because we're using the internal batteries on both cameras. We're just topping them off with this battery. So it's very hot swappable. You could run basically continuous off a battery all day long for as long as your memory cards last, and there's no problem, there's no worry about a power failure or anything like that because both cameras have an internal battery, and this one is just being used to charge them up. The reason I like these small rig batteries is because they have that extra USB-C output, meaning I can attach them here to this plate and power one camera, and then by simply plugging in on that USB-C out, it also is an in to charge it later if you want, but I can charge both cameras, no problem. You may have noticed one of the secrets of this rig already, and it's one of the specific things to the GH7. If I take this off again, this top camera, you see there's this extra cable, and you might be wondering what this is and why you need it or want it. What's cool about the GH7 is that this flash sync port is how you get timecode in and out of the camera, meaning I can send a timecode from one camera out the flash sync port in to this camera via the flash sync port, and now I have perfectly synchronized footage whenever I'm already doing that with the single trigger record button, but if there's any worry of syncing in post-production, the timecode matches with a simple wire. There's no tentacle sync, there's no Atomos, there's no deity. It's all one camera to the other, and it works with a simple cable. This cable is like $6 or $7 on Amazon. It's nothing fancy, it's nothing expensive. It is unique to the Micro Four Thirds cameras that can do it. So like the GH6 can do it, the GH7 can do it, and I would recommend the GH7 for this setup for a few reasons. The GH7, being Micro Four Thirds, means first and foremost, the lenses are smaller and they're lighter weight. So this 9mm, which is now down on the bottom, and this 20mm lens are both like a 1.7, 1.4, they're very fast apertures. Now, you're not gonna get the same depth of field that you'll get on a full frame camera, but you will get the light gathering capabilities. So you do have fast lenses, that's nice, and they're small, lightweight. Benefit of Micro Four Thirds in this setup is that time code, like I said, but it also can shoot open gate. What's cool about open gate when you're shooting this way is because these cameras are fixed, they're stationary, you might not have perfect composition every single shot, depending on which camera you're prioritizing, which one you're looking at. With open gate, you can always shift that frame up or down if you're finalizing 16:9. So if you were shooting with a Sony or Canon or Nikon or something that shoots 16:9, this would all still work, but the open gate gives you that extra flexibility in post-production to shift your framing up or down slightly, which is perfect because these cameras are built up and down. So if it's ever off, just a little too tilted up too much, tilted down too much, you can always reframe in post-production. You can think of it kind of like a tilt shift lens, not the tilting, but the shifting part. Same kind of concept with open gate when you have 4x3 in the case of Micro Four Thirds or 3x2 in the case of the full frame Lumix cameras. The other great advantage of using something like a GH7, like a lot of cameras nowadays, it has phase detect autofocus. I think Lumix calls it phase hybrid autofocus. Whatever you want to call it, this camera can autofocus, track faces, track humans, track your subject, whatever you're doing. The camera can do basically half the job for you by autofocusing. I will admit that when you're shooting with two cameras, it is a little bit to get used to. You're trying to wonder, which camera do I focus on? And you will have to pick, you will have to prioritize one angle over the other. I don't know if your brain can multitask better than mine, but I do always have to pick one angle that I'm favoring a little bit more, but that's why that autofocus really helps. The moment I'm looking at the one camera, I don't have to worry so much about that other camera because I know it's doing a pretty good job even though I'm not babysitting it. And that's the beauty of this type of setup. If you shoot with the right lens combination, you don't have to worry too much about your framing or composition or anything like that, because for the most part, you're generally going to be pretty safe. Yeah, you want to pay attention to both cameras. You don't want things to get too out of whack, but in general, you're going to be able to cover both angles fairly well, as long as you stick with wider focal lengths. So right now on the full frame Lumix cameras, the top one is at an 18 and the bottom lens is a 35. I think that kind of wider to mid-range focal lengths make this a lot easier. If you're shooting stuff really far away, obviously the lenses are gonna get bigger, they're gonna get heavier, and they're gonna be harder to frame properly. So this is really for kind of up close human interaction, at a tabletop, a talking head, just one person kind of doing their thing like I am here. And let's face it, a lot of content nowadays is just like that. It's one person talking to a camera doing something, and this makes it a lot easier to film all by yourself, and you get to maintain those eye lines. There's a few other small things on here, like for example, the bottom plate. It's this Nicey Rig XL plate, just to kind of give it a nice proper base, so when you set it down, everything doesn't just tip forward. I'll say this looks a lot more natural and professional than just punching in on 8K or 12K or 16K. Yes, resolution is helpful for composition reframing after the fact, but there's nothing quite like having two distinct angles. Even though they're very similar, these are distinct. You can always tell when it's just a punch in or a crop of one angle versus a true secondary angle with a slightly different position, slightly different angle, and the actual true focal length for that same sensor size. I personally prefer it. It does double your footage, but if you were going to do multi-camera anyway, who cares? You can just do it all yourself, one person. And now if you had another shooter, you could even get 3 angles if you wanted. It's a little bit heavier than one camera, obviously, but I don't have a monitor. I don't have any of the extra stuff that would add more physical weight to this rig. I can easily hold it all by myself, one hand underneath to support, one hand on the side to trigger recording. And I could go like this, honestly, for quite a while, and I have hours, in fact. Now, if you wanted to build this slightly different, you always could. Different cameras, different configurations. Maybe there's some way you put this on your shoulder if that's how you prefer. But for me, I love that I can just look right here, frame up, close up, wide angle, get my shots that I need, because I know I'm going to need both a wide angle and a close up. And then if I'm working with somebody else, they can get their coverage as well. But I'm avoiding that punch in, that digital cheap effect of just cropping in on the footage. And I'm getting 2 distinct angles, all from one point of view. And it is still pretty lightweight. Something like the GH7 that lets you do the remote trigger is that extra benefit of being able to pull the trigger once instead of doing it twice. Again, you can always make it work with other cameras, but I personally prefer the setup, again, for that time code synchronization. It just makes everything simple, low profile, and easy versus kind of cobbling it together with other parts and pieces from other cameras. You can do it, but this just makes the most sense to me, and that's why I kind of like it. Needless to say, even the GH7 has those tilt-up screens, so I can be perfectly in line and just have them kind of angled up, and that's also really nice and easy to shoot that way. I'm just looking down, I have both my positions there, I can get my framing, and it just works. Battery, don't even need this. There's a lot of stuff I personally like because I don't like swapping batteries all the time, but you don't even need that. You could save some weight if you don't mind switching batteries as much. I think it's probably the best way to do this type of content, but I don't know. Let me know what you think. I think the main secret really is just that Arca-Swiss plate in between, and the fact that these cages have Arca-Swiss like built into the cage. There's no extra plates. There's nothing extra to buy. It just kind of fits together seamlessly, and I think it's really nice. You can do it with almost anything, but I would recommend going with something like the GH7 just for those extra conveniences.